Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another DC comic review, and in this DC comic review I will be reviewing Action Comics Superman, issue 1042, the next issue in Detective Comics Batman, and last but not least, Deathstroke issue 8. So I'll get things prepared so I can start off with the first thing that I'll be reviewing, and it'll be time to get started. So jumping into the first comic that I'll be reviewing, it's Action Comics Superman, issue 1042, and as you can see here, there are two quite nice covers here. One is the main trade press, and the other one, a variant. Now, do these covers in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside the story? Well, sure enough, the first one does. The second one, I picked the variant because I really liked it. And it's really nice to see this Superman being shown once again. So, for the first cover, I gave it an 8 out of 10 because it does actually match something that is happening inside the story. But as for the second cover, even though it doesn't completely match what's happening inside of the story, I gave it a 10 out of 10. How could you not resist? Plus, it reminds me a little bit like the 78 Superman. So I'll use the variant cover to show the internal art, as well as show some of the things that are happening in relation to some of the story. I will not be covering the backstory, and that goes with the Detective Comics Batman as well. So I'll get things ready now to start to show stuff around the beginning, middle and end of the story. So starting off with some of the art around the beginning, we have a better written John Samuel Kent compared to Tom Taylor's John Samuel Kent, with Philip Kennedy Johnson. And here we have a situation of him talking to his mother, and of course he also shows a little bit of remorse in regards to the situation around Taular, to which something happened in that situation earlier on in this World saga. I'll now jump towards the middle. As we jump towards the middle, as we can see, we have Superman, who is on World, and he's about to encounter another somewhat beast of sorts, which Mongol has set in his way, and of course there's a little bit of a collision between the characters. Now, last but not least, let's move towards the end. And as we move towards the end, we have the character of Lois, who's checking out a steelworks, which is run by John Henry Irons. And as you can see by the panel here, they've obviously known each other for quite a while. And it looks like he's playing a part in helping the situation which Superman and also Lois and, of course, the son of Kal-El is involved in. For the internal art, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move in relation to the story. To those who are new to the channel, there are certain areas to which I like to address the stories. And the first one is references. So did we get any references to any of the previous comics? Because those references help keep the reader informed of where things are happening continuity-wise, especially comic references. And the next thing is time, because the time part is also important, can also connect to the continuity, and it lets you have a rough idea of what time an event might be playing out throughout the day or what time it is presently in the storyline. So we got none of those, but let's see where Philip Kennedy Johnston did actually do quite well. Now, of course, to those who have been following the story, this takes place between both Earth on the Fortress of Solitude and also Warworld. And they're somewhat the key locations, but also on Warworld we also had the arena, to which we got to see Superman somewhat participating in. And we also got 19 miles outside Metropolis at the Steel Works headquarters, and that connects to John Henry Irons, who we meet at the end of the story. The characters, or the cast of characters that we did get in this story, we had Lois, we had John, we had Kalex, we of course got Superman. We also got the appearance of Midnighter, Mongol, John Henry Irons, and Tao La. For the overall story rating, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It's now time to move on to the next one. So now it's time to move on to Batman Detective Comics, issue 1059. And starting off with first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside of a story? Sure enough it does, to which I gave it a 7 out of 10, even though you do see 8 people wearing green on the cover. I'll now start to show some internal art. I will not be covering the backstory, and I'll get to showing some of the art around the beginning, middle and of course the end. So this is some of the art around the beginning of the story, and as we can see here, we've got the character of the Riddler. And it looks like he's hitting the airwaves and getting some media attention. As things continue, we start to see some connected to the courthouse, and also one of the characters somewhat connected there. I'll now jump towards the middle. As we start to move towards the middle of the story, we notice that an event has occurred, leading the judge to being put into the Gotham General Hospital. And of course, we have the appearance of Bruce Wayne, making sure that this judge also gets some flowers from him. And last but not least, towards the end of the story, to which Batman has finally caught up with one of the characters, somewhat connected to Riddler, and he starts to work out what is happening with this particular case. For the internal art, I decided to give it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move in relation to the story rating. First things first, did we get any comic book references to any of the previous issues that might help in relation to this story? No, we didn't. Did we get any indication of time? No, we didn't. Moving into the next thing, location. Well, the locations that we got to see here were, of course, Gotham itself. We got the courthouse, we got the hospital, and last but not least, the area of the garage to which Batman was doing some things. The cast of characters consisting of Riddler, Batman, Judge Donovan, and also her daughter Coraline, and last but not least, Oracle. For this overall story rating, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move on to Deathstroke. So now it's time to jump into the last comic for this video, and this is Deathstroke issue 8. Jumping into first things first, do these covers in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside of the story? Sure enough, they both pretty much do, and one is the 1.25 variant, which you see here, and I gave cover 1, which is on the left hand side, an 8 out of 10, and the one on the right hand side, also an 8 out of 10. I'll now jump to showing some of the internal art around the beginning, middle and end, as this is part 3 of the Shadow War arc. As we start off with some art around the beginning of the story, it is quite interesting. It doesn't feel somewhat consistent compared to the Damian Wayne one, but for what it is, I think it's alright. And here we have Deathstroke with Respawn. Taking him into one of his hideouts at in San Francisco, I think it is. Yep, San Francisco. As we start to jump towards the middle of the story, we have an encounter with Bruce Wayne, back again with Talia, and of course something comes up to his mind, something in relation to Tom King's run, but I think it's time for that Tom King run to be totally retconned. These two are the best couple, not the bat and the cat. That turned out flat. And last but not least, some of the art towards the end of the story. Now for the internal art, I decided to give it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the key story. Moving into first things first, did we get any comic references? No, we didn't. Did we get any indication of time? No, we didn't. Moving into the area of the locations, we had San Francisco, and of course Nepal, to where Batman was. The cast of characters consisting of Angel Breaker, Raptor, Deathstroke, Respawn, of course Batman and Talia, Ghostmaker. We also had Damian Wayne along with Ravager. For the overall story rating, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.